class for help for later. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our second Pirkei Avot class. We're actually studying chapter 3 of Pirkei Avot. I've been getting great feedback on the class over this past week. Many people had questions and wanted to analyze it a little further. So we're going to jump right into chapter 3 of Pirkei Avot. And as I mentioned at the beginning of last week's class, while most of the Talmud and the Mishnah is actually talking to us on how to live life, what we do, what we don't, the times of Shabbat, the holiday of Passover, how much matzah to eat, etc. This Mishnah, Pirkei Avot, is actually speaking to the person. Instead of telling us what we should be doing, it's speaking about the character of the person, the ethics the Jewish person should be living with, and we found some great meaning in it. So I'll be sharing my screen. We'll try again like last week, where we'll share the screen, we'll go around to read the Mishnah, and then anyone is, of course, welcome to share what they're able to get out of the Mishnah, and I'll share some of the commentaries that I've been researching from a book that I think I emailed most of you. I think I almost emailed all of you a link where you could buy this online. It's actually the author of this book that I'm using. He's a friend of mine. His name is Rabbi Marcus, and some of you actually came to a lecture of his that I invited him to our community last year in January. He came last January 2019. He wrote a commentary on the Tehillim, on the book of Psalms, and a commentary on the Pirkei Avot. He also wrote a commentary on the Megillah, and he's very well known. What he does, he collects a lot of commentaries and he puts them together in a book. So he's more of a collector, and he's been doing a great job at it. All right, anyway, so I'm going to be interspersing some commentaries, but of course, everyone's welcome to share what is going on in their mind. The first Mishnah, as I'll be sharing my screen, will be from Akavia. Akavia is someone who, there's not that many statements of his throughout the Talmud, but in Tractate Brachot, it says about this man, Akavia ben Mahalel, that whenever there was a pilgrimage around the holiday of Passover, when all the Jews would come together in the holy city of Jerusalem, in the holy temple, it says that there was no one among everyone there, and there was millions of Jews present at the same time, there was no one as great as Akavia in wisdom, purity, and piety. So we're dealing with obviously a very holy sage, a holy rabbi, and he gives us something that may seem like a downer by reading it at first, but we'll definitely have to absorb it, analyze it, and we have some good thinkers on the class on Zoom with us that will help each other to understand some deeper meanings. So the first Mishnah on chapter 3 starts with Akavia, and we will go around, and maybe people have it different on their screens. Usually I go around the table, whoever's sitting to either my right or my left. The first video that's beneath mine is Thomas and Shira. So Thomas, we'll start with you to read Mishnah 1.
Okay. Akavia ben Mahalel says, look at and consider these three things at all times, and you will not come to commit a sin. Know where you came from, where you are going, and before whom you will eventually have to give justification and a detailed report of everything you did during your lifetime. The Mishnah explains, where did you come from? The body begins growing from a spoiled drop of fluid in the mother's womb. Where are you going? You will eventually die and go to a grave, a place that is full of dust, worms, and maggots. That sounds great. Before whom you will give a detailed report, before the Supreme King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be He.
Okay, so we'll stop there. I think the Mishnah that ends the Mishnah, so we'll stop there. So in summary, just reading it plainly from this Mishnah, it just tells us that look at three things and you won't come to slip. You won't make mistakes in life. You won't come to the hand of sin if you realize where you come from, where you're going, and in front of whom you'll be giving a detailed report. Remember those things and you'll be in good shape. But obviously we want to analyze this a little more. There's so much to unpack in these dense words. So I'll just share with you some things here that are standing out. You know, Thomas, once I have you reading, it starts by saying, consider three things. You see the analysis of the word three things. So the Rebbe
Yeah,
has actually a beautiful commentary. Let's see if actually if that's mentioned here. Do you mind reading that footnote 3 at the bottom?
of course. By looking at three things, you will not do a sin. In addition to the two obvious components of your life, God and yourself, there is a third component, a world that must be elevated. Your soul came down to this world for a purpose, to reveal God's holiness in it. If you keep this in mind, you will not come to sin. The Rebbe.
Awesome. Awesome. So I just want to explain that a little bit. That's actually a beautiful, it's so classic Rebbe. I need to explain why. There's many communities that the Rebbe would not necessarily rebuke, that wasn't the Rebbe's personality, but wanted to shake them. And the Rebbe would say, what are you doing? These are communities that are very insular, very observant and traditional, and bringing the old shtetl into Brooklyn or wherever else they live. But the Rebbe wanted them to realize that the whole purpose of why you came into this world is to influence the world, to take the world and inspire it. So there's many communities that they look at the world as a danger, and rightfully so. There's a lot of dangers in the world. You know, in Marin County, we're so blessed. There's not even billboards. I don't know if anyone realized that, but I think it's a law. I'm assuming it is, because there's no billboards across Marin County. As soon as you leave Marin, I know whenever we drive down south and we go to LA and San Diego, it's like shocking. It's like we almost want to tell the kids, don't look out the windows. Like what is allowed on billboards is rather frightening. So there's communities that remain very insular. They don't allow television or internet into their homes. They don't allow, they speak Yiddish only. I'm not going to go on and on, but I think you get what I mean. But the Rebbe was saying is a quote from this Mishnah, realize there's three things. There's not two. It's not just you and God. There's you, God, and a world. Those are three things. And your purpose of why God sent you down here is to inspire the world. There's three things. And realize those three things, it's not just two things, there's actually three. Realize those three things, and you won't come to the place of sin. You won't be, you know, in Yiddish, the expression is a shanda. It's like a shame that you're such a blessed potential soul, and you're, you know, let me just explain one more thing. In English, when we say the word sin, it's uncomfortable. It almost sounds half Christian. It's not the right word. It's sin in Judaism, which is Hebrew is the word chet, which we translate as sin, is actually voided potential. When someone has potential and they waste it, that's a sin. That's a wasted talent. When someone's a genius and they waste it away and they don't share gifts of wisdom or experience, if someone has great experience, and like Debbie, like you were saying last week, you don't share that experience, in Yiddish it would be called a shanda. It's a waste. You have to come to my Yiddish class on Wednesday to get some of the other Yiddish words. But over here that we're using the word sin, but the way the Rebbe is saying it is realize there's three things in the world. That's one beautiful thing. Thank you, Thomas, on that commentary from the Rebbe. I'm just gonna, it's hard for me because obviously I want you to have the text that you could see certain analysis as you could see me explaining it. Towards the end, let me just share my screen again, just so you could see those words. I'm just gonna hover. Could everyone see my mouse? Are you able to see?
Yeah.
And you guys are muted, but you don't have to mute yourself. You're welcome to be unmuted. It says over here, you will give a detailed report. Let's actually go a little higher. In Hebrew, okay, so the English, they just translate it as a detailed report, but the Hebrew, I'm just going to put my...
Mine says, whom you give justification and reckoning.
Justification and reckoning. Awesome, good. That's the plain text of it. In Hebrew, the word is din, which is this word here. It means like a ruling, like a justice. V'cheshbon. Cheshbon means like an accounting or a reckoning.
like a bill in a restaurant.
Oh, yeah. So what's interesting is the proper wording in the Hebrew should have been the reverse, cheshbon and then din. Because when you go to court, you first give a reckoning and then you get the justice. The ruling, which is the word din, would come after the accounting, after the reckoning. And yet over here, the word ruling, din, comes before cheshbon. So there's a beautiful commentary that explains, there are several commentaries that explain this, that the way it works in the upper courts, in the supernal courts, I should say, is the soul, when it comes up there isn't a reckoning and then a ruling. There's actually first a ruling and then a reckoning. How does that work? They actually bring your soul in front of the heavenly court, and what they ask you questions, but they don't analyze your case yet, what your life and how you lived and how you shared, etc. They actually tell you. They actually ask you rulings yourself. If they ask a general case. If so-and-so did such a thing, what would you say the ruling is? And then you would give a ruling, innocent or guilty. And then they would do a reckoning and show your life on how you acted or reacted. And the ruling is already in place as a result of the ruling that you did, even prior to the reckoning. So that's just a little detail on the wording, just the wording of it. But there's a deeper thing at play over here from the Rebbe. And I'm just going to go back here for a second. If everyone gets dizzy, I could take a vote. If anyone, you could type it in the chat box, or you're welcome to just tell me. If you prefer, I just leave the text up. I'm happy to do that if this is getting you dizzy of going back and forth. But there is a beautiful commentary from the Rebbe on this, that while some of it seems rather dense and heavy, by saying, look at what we come from, and look where we're going. We're coming from a putrid drop, and we're going to a place of worms and maggots. It sounds a little heavy. The Rebbe says that this is actually, the Mishnah, or the author over here, his name is Akavia. He's actually speaking to three different types of people, three personalities, three characters. The first clause is addressing the person that is living a very soulful life. They're living a life that is purely godly and insular, and they're in a cocoon. So the first thing he's saying already is recognize that there's three things. Like the commentary Thomas quoted before, recognize that now you're not here just to reach more spiritual heights. You're here to inspire and make a difference and be a lamplighter in our world. Let's reflect upon three things. Then the next part is actually speaking to a person who is struggling with imperfection, a person who's feeling very down on themselves. I'm a nobody. I'm not worth anything. I'm worthless. Look around. Everyone else has it all figured out. I'm a nobody. So in that, Akavia says something just so stunning. I'm just going to analyze the text again. I'm going to hover the Hebrew again, just because this is Chassidus 101. What it does over here is just, in one word, it's just beautiful. Over here, there's words over here. You see this word over here? This is a word in Hebrew called da. Dalet and ayin together, it makes the word da, which means know. Know, like K-N-O-W. You should know. Me'ayin, from where? Bata, you come from. So the first thing you should keep in mind is know from where you come from. What the Rebbe, the way the Rebbe understands it, this is classic Chassidus. The Rebbe over here is already addressing this person. The Rebbe says, you should know, not you should know where you come from. You should know that you come from where. The word in Hebrew, ayin, this word ayin, is actually, besides for it meaning from where, which is the basic English of it, from where, the word ayin also is representing an incredibly high spiritual level. In Kabbalah, there's a level called yesh, which means an existence. Our created world is called a yesh. We're in existence. We could touch, we feel. Whatever we could touch and feel is an existence. It's a yesh. But we come from a place called ayin. Ayin means, what is it? From where? Ayin is a place that we can't even describe. It's a light of God that is beyond us. We are created, and we come from a creator. So from where we come from, we don't know. So we just call it from where. We can't define it. So that level in spiritual terms is called Ayin. We are Yesh, we come from Ayin. So the way the Rebbe understands this Mishnah is realize you should know Me'ayin Bata, that you come from a source of Ayin. An Ayin is an extremely potent, godly light that is so powerful in its source. So if a person is feeling low and shallow and empty, a Kavya is telling you, realize that where you come from is a place of Ayin. You come from an extremely high spiritual stature, extremely high spiritual place. And where you are going, bear in mind that what your divine service, you trudging at it, you're soldering on in difficult times, going through life and bringing light into it, you're going to reach a place that is extremely high. Finally, that's the second type of person. The first person Akavya is speaking to is a person who's living a very insular life. And to that, Akavya says, know that there's three things, and there's God, there's a person, a soul, and there's a world. And you have to integrate all three. The next person is a person who's feeling very struggling with imperfection. And to that, the Rebbe is saying that Akavya is lifting up the person, saying you come from an extremely high source. You come from a place of Ayin. And finally, the third person is a person who is feeling very proud, feeling very sure of themselves, and feeling very driven by ego. And to that, Akavya is giving him a diet. Akavya is giving him a regimen of reflection. Realize that the reason why you're here, that the purpose of your life is not for material pursuits, because your materialism won't get you anywhere. The beauty of your body, while it's important to be healthy and to take care of yourself, and that's actually a mitzvah in the Torah, but to indulge in yourself could lead to danger. And you have to be very careful, because indulging could lead to ego, because you're feeling good about it and you want more of it, and it's a slippery slope. So over here, Akavya is saying, don't ride on too high a horse. Realize that you have a purpose and meditate on it, that you come from something that is insignificant. You don't come from something that's so insignificant, you come from infinite. And that's where you should be striving to achieve, and trying to satisfy your bodily desires day in and day out. You're actually lowering yourself to a place of sin, which is a place of unholiness. All right, that's enough of my commentaries on this thing. We'll open it up. Anyone else have a commentary on the Mishnah that they would like to share?
Well, I'm trying to understand, you just said it, but I didn't hear the word that you said. I'm still trying to understand about the where we come from, and at what level you're trying to explain that.
Yeah, so anything that we can relate to, we could define. We say what it is. Anything we don't know what it is, what do we call it? We don't have a word for it. So anything godly, it's beyond our description. So in Hebrew, the word to say what is or where is the word ayin. It means where is. That's what ayin means. So it's a godly light that is beyond description. So over here, the sentence simply is just saying, realize from where you come. But the way the Rebbe is saying it is, realize you come from where. Which in English maybe doesn't sound that poetic, but in Hebrew it's actually saying, realize you come from a lofty source that we can't define. In Kabbalah it's called ayin. So over here, he's actually addressing you, addressing a person who's struggling and saying, realize you come from a lofty source called ayin. So those three words, da ma'ayin bata, could either be read, know from where you come, or it could be read, know that you come from ayin, know that you come from where. I always appreciate these commentaries where you take the words, and the words itself is addressing an answer to a very deep question.
Okay, so my point is, though, then it's talking about the know where you come in respect of the miracle of life given from God, not that necessarily our ancestors or the physical where we come from, but the higher level of the miracle of life.
Yeah, I mean, definitely your ancestors, in Yiddish, the word is yichus. We always want to know if, the person's lineage, when the mother is marrying off their child, and they want to know, what's the lineage, what's the ancestry of the family we're marrying into.
Right.
That is important. But over here, it's definitely focusing on the spiritual stature, that each and every one of us come from a very high spiritual source, that regardless of a person's ancestry, if they have any or that is worth, or they have that is not worth, it is definitely worthy because of their spiritual stature. And that is the miracle of life where we have from. Just another example, there's a beautiful Karabach song on a verse that we sing every Shabbat in synagogue for Thomas and Shira, which I'm sure are missing our weekly shul. It's the bottom two lines of page 187 that we sing together all the time in this Siddur. And I'm not going to sing the whole song because I don't want to lose my class for tonight. But the first verse is a Karabach song. It goes like this: Shir Lamalot Esa Einai El Heharim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Right, Peter? You're familiar with that one? It's a Karabach song.
Yeah.
So anyway, those words are actually from David. David lived through extreme challenges. He was sought after by Saul, and Goliath's brothers wanted to kill him. His own son wanted to kill him. He had a troubling life. And one day he was looking at the mountains and he says, God, where will my help come from? And he answers, my help will come from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. The word in Hebrew is, from where will my help come? The word is, me'ayin yavo ezri. From where will my help come? The way the Hasidic masters look at those three words is that already is not just a question, from where will my help come? It's already the answer to the question. My help will come from ayin. Me'ayin yavo ezri. From ayin will my help come. Now, if I'm looking for support, I'm looking for strength, don't look at the strength of a horse or the beauty of a car. That's not where your inner strength is going to come from. It's going to come from ayin. It's going to come from the spiritual source of where you derive from, and that's ayin. So it's just another example of this wording of ayin. It's a Kabbalah terminology, but it's nicely used in our Mishnah here. Oh, side by side. I like that. All right, let me try that. Thank you, Debbie. I will.
You'll see it when you start sharing your screen, and then we can see both at the same time.
That's cool. Hold on. I would need my 10-year-old daughter to help me find that.
Well, I'll show you. You have to share your screen first, and then I'll show you where it is.
Oh, after it's shared? Okay. Cool.
Okay, so now at the top where it says you're viewing your screen, and then right next to it is view options.
So we can see you on the side.
Okay.
And then they're side by side. And then there's two vertical lines in between your screen and then the gallery, and you can resize it horizontally so I can see all 8 people here and your screen.
Perfect. Yes, very good. Thomas and Shira. It's really called Ein Sof, which is no end, but it's similar to the ayin that we're speaking about here. That is similar. Very good. Awesome. All right, so that was just one of the analysis. We'll keep on going because we have a lot we want to try to cover. There's some beautiful...
I have one quick question, Rabbi.
Yes, please.
When Moses was asked Hashem about how is he going to describe him to the Israelites, or how does he describe himself? And he says the English translation is I am that I am.
Yes.
Is that the word ayin? Is it used in that, or what is that?
The word is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. It's close to ayin, but it's a different word. And actually, according to some opinions, Hadassah has been learning it for her international competition. Those words that God answers, what is your name? Moses asks, and he answers these words, I am what I am. According to some opinions, that's actually one of God's names. It's actually a name of God, which is interesting, but it's different than ayin. Because that's God, it's actually an interesting point. But I think it would be different than what we said in this Mishnah. Awesome. Okay, we'll continue on to Mishnah 2. Shira, would you like to read?
Not on my screen.
Okay, no pressure. We're going to go to Mishnah 2. Now, what we'll realize straight from the beginning Mishnah 2. I'm actually just going to tell you the author, who he is. His name is Rabbi Hanina. He was the assistant of the high priest. And I just want to explain to everyone who he was a little bit. He lived during the Second Temple era. Now, some of you may not know this, and you probably perhaps would not want to have known this, but unfortunately, during the Second Temple times, after the story of Hanukkah, there was unfortunate corruption going on in the leadership. The way it worked is the Davidic dynasty, the descendants of King David were promised kingship, but after the story of Hanukkah, the kingship, the leadership went to the role of the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees. And they were very good leaders. But after they died and their grandchildren took over, they were kind of assimilated into the Roman power. And they actually bought their way into power. Whoever paid more to the Romans were able to be considered the leaders. And they were considered the Cohens. It was very unfortunate. And what ended up happening is they would go into the Holy of Holies, Kodesh HaKodashim, every year, but they wouldn't come out. Because if a person wasn't worthy, they wouldn't make it out of the holiness of the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, in the Holy of Holies. So over here it actually says he was the head assistant of in the Hebrew, it's actually Kohanim, which is, he was the head assistant of many Kohanim because he lived during a corrupt time. And yet, even with the corruption going on, he still says, his main theme of the mission at the beginning is to be kind and respectful to the authority. Which I find it interesting as we're going to read it, to what we learned last week. If anyone remembers, Mishnah 3 last week was saying, be very wary of the government, because they're only nice when they need something from you, but they'll drop you like a fly when they don't need you. But over here he's saying, be kind and respectful to the government. And he's referring to even a kind of a corrupt government, because that's the time he lived in. Anyway, Shira, go ahead. Let's see Mishnah 2. I'll just scroll.
Sure.
Go for it. And I'll have you read the first half, and then we'll stop there because it's going to be a lot to try to read at once. Go for it.
Okay. Rabbi Kalina, the head assistant of the high priest, says, pray for the well-being and success of the government, because if not, for fear of government, people would swallow each other alive. Rabbi Kalina ben Terdon says, if two people sit together and no words of Torah are discussed between them, it is considered to be a gathering of jokers, and God does not dwell there. As it says in Psalms, a righteous person does not sit among a gathering of jokers.
All right, let's stop there for a moment. So just the first half of the Mishnah, thank you, Shira. It's a very insightful Mishnah, both from Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion. I wonder if they're the same person. I'm not sure. I'm assuming it's different people, because the fact that it reintroduces the name. But just, I want to analyze the first half of the Mishnah. What do you make of it? Should we be respecting the government at all costs? It's definitely something politically charged. We're going to try to stay away from politics. But he's saying it's better government, even if they're corrupt, than anarchy and every person just fending for themselves. That's the way we understand it. It's better government, even if they're not the best, than no government and people every person to their own authority. If anyone has anything else to share on that, you're welcome to add.
Kind of makes it difficult to separate church and state.
Continue. Why? By the way, in Judaism, there is no separation of church and state. We obviously follow the law of the land, but in Judaism, it was all intertwined. It was all one.
You're referring to the second statement about if two people sit together and no words of Torah are discussed between them, it's considered a gathering of jokers.
Okay, so what is it? Explain more about the church and state?
Well, if you're doing that in the middle of the government,
I think it means two.
I guess I'm not used to Jewish government. I'm thinking of our government.
Okay, no, but I actually find that to be such an important teaching. Whenever two people meet, it's not by coincidence. There's a purpose and a reason of why me and you are together this evening or in the morning, whatever it is. Even it seems so, I met Thomas and Shira at Costco a month ago, Passover shopping. But there was a reason. I was like, I was telling them about a kosher wine. I was like, you know what, I should actually get more kosher wine. And I got more wine, and it was the best blessing because, of course, we didn't have anyone at our Seder, but we had many people who we were providing Seders for that wouldn't have had kosher wine at their Seder. So instead of just giving them matzah or whatever, people were coming to our home, I was also offering them kosher wine. And they said, oh, that's a great idea. Have kosher wine at a Seder. So it all came from just that coincidental moment of seeing Thomas and Shira at Costco. It's a little sliver of an example, just because I see Thomas and Shira right under me on the video. But the same is true in every moment. The way that the Rebbe trained every soldier of his to realize that, and he did this because I got dollars from the Rebbe, and my mother-in-law on the screen got dollars from the Rebbe. And the reason why the Rebbe would give dollars, people didn't need $1 from the Rebbe, but the Rebbe people wanted the Rebbe's blessing. My mother wanted to show the Rebbe her children. So, but the Rebbe's idea was that if two people are meeting, it shouldn't just be for ourselves, it should benefit a third person. There has to be a benefit. So the Rebbe made us an ambassador to charity by giving us $1. It may seem so petty, it's just $1, but the Rebbe was instilling something a lot deeper to realize that anytime we meet, it shouldn't just be for our own needs, it should be to benefit someone else also. So over here, the words of Torah, it's also speaking to anything meaningful. There should be a meaningful reason of why we meet.
So it's acts of Torah also.
For sure, Torah, yeah. For sure, Torah should be included in it. But anything meaningful, meaning if you're meeting with a non-Jewish person, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to sit down and say, let's learn the weekly Torah portion. They may not want to really sit down with you again. So you have to be careful with what you're sharing. But anything meaningful, if you have something insightful, inspiring, trust me, Debbie, and everyone watching, now people need inspiration more than ever. I know that because I could use inspiration. But so when you're calling someone, it's not just, could you buy me flour or yeast from the store? It's say that we're going through a tough time, but here's an enlightening thought I had. And don't let it just be a jokester conversation. Bring in some meaning or Torah into it.
I like
Are
that.
the first two
Thank you.
sentences related to each other?
I'm sorry, Adrian, ask that again.
I'm not getting a connect. Like I'm trying to follow the train of thought from before, but when they're talking about two people sitting together, it's not necessarily having anything to do with government, is it?
Let me see if that's commentary worthy. Let me see if there's any commentary that explains the link between the two.
Yeah.
Jolie, do you have any insight on that, or why there's two? Like, what's the link between the two? Because that's actually a very good question.
I wish I did. I think it's a good question.
Let me see.
So that's interesting because I'm in mine, that second paragraph about two people sit together, that's the start of my 3.3. Because my chapter 3, verse 2 ends with, we would have swallowed each other alive.
Oh,
And then my chapter, verse 3 starts with, if the two sit together.
Well, chapter 3, Mishnah 3, does it start with Rabbi Shimon or Rabbi Hanina? How does it start there, Debbie?
2,
No, 3. How does it start?
chapter 3 or verse 3?
Mishnah 3, verse 3.
3 starts with Rabbi Hanina ben
Oh,
Treadwell.
okay, interesting. Okay, cool. That's so Adrian, I think that answers your question. According to some, they actually divide this Mishnah into 2 Mishnahs. That's very
So
interesting.
they're unrelated. Okay. So you don't have to worry about church and state. That's what I mean. That doesn't seem to be a
Okay.
comment on that.
Adrian, that's a great insight. We should, I think you should work with Debbie on making your own commentary to the Mishnah. That's really good.
Well, yes, we'll get together after the
I look forward to it.
quarantine. Yes.
I want to share one more beautiful thought from the Rebbe on this. There's the opening 2 lines of the Mishnah is where it says, if not for fear of government, people would swallow each other alive. It's actually, there's something metaphorical over here that the Rebbe learns. The Mishnah over here, according to the Rebbe, is referring to a person who's overly conscious of his own achievements and abilities. He's looking at the top of the world. I became a CEO of whatever. I made $1 million, or I drive a beautiful car. or whatever it is, he's feeling very good about himself. And therefore anyone else, he's kind of swallowing them up, which means he doesn't allow them their own identity, their own voice. It's really his voice in them. But he doesn't want to hear an answer back. He just wants to talk to them and swallow them up, meaning he's denying them of their voice, of their identity. They're accessories to his needs. And he's denying them their purpose. So really no logical explanation can cure a person of being self-centered. In other words, this guy is self-centered. And if a person is looking for a cure of self-centeredness, it's going to be difficult to find, because anything that's taught to them, they're going to take it in a very self-centered way, saying, oh, I don't have a problem with that. Let me share that with someone else. So it's a very dangerous place to be at. What is the only antidote for this person is having a reverence, a respect, or in English it's called a fear of divine kingship. The government over here is referring to the fear of government, could also be referring to the divine kingship. Because in front of God, no matter how much money you have, or how little money you have, or how successful or experienced you are or not, you're equal. In front of God, small and big are the same, because he's infinite. So 1 in a million, it's the same. So he has to pray for God to have mercy on him and help him he has to feel a reverence to God's kingship. And by instilling him in himself a reverence, a respect for God's kingship, he will also start finding a respect and seeing an appreciation of people around him also. So it's just metaphorically, you're able to read a lot deeper into these words, that pray for the government is actually referring to the godly government, according to this. Pray meaning if a person is self-centered, they're swallowing people up alive, they're struggling with self-centeredness, they need to be in a place of prayer, which instills with them reverence, respect, and a higher authority, which is what prayer is about going out of yourself and realizing that the God within you, and then you're able to have more. Okay, we're gonna carry on.
Another point of commentary that I have about that is that the opposite of government is anarchy, which is something that the sages were loath to accept.
Right, meaning like I think I mentioned at the beginning, even a corrupt government is better than anarchy.
Right.
Awesome, great, thank you. Okay, we definitely want to have so much I want to cover. Chapter 3 is rich with so many things. I'm gonna skip around a little bit. I'm gonna go to Mishnah 7, just because there's a lot of good ones and there's a limited time. Jolie, do you mind reading Mishnah 7?
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Go for it.
Rabbi Elazar of Bartota says, when you serve God, give him from what comes from him. For example, serve him by spending money on commandments or giving generously to charity, because you and everything that you own really belong to him. That is what King David says. Everything comes from you, God, and everything that we give you is originally from your hand. Rabbi Yaakov says, someone who walks in the street and studies Torah by heart and interrupts his study even to admire God's beautiful world and say, how beautiful is this tree, how beautiful is this plowed field, is considered by the Torah as if he has committed a sin for which he would deserve to lose his life. Whew.
Okay, that's heavy. So let's try to break up this Mishnah a little bit. Let's start with the first part, which was from Rabbi Elazar. It's a beautiful statement. In Hebrew, the words it's actually rather short in Hebrew, but it's powerful. It's almost like a rhyme in the Hebrew. Tenlo, there's even a song from a Hasidic superstar that sings on these words, and our kids sing it all the time and the words, it's amazing that we raise our kids with these words. It's Tenlo Mishalo. Give him what is his. Sha'ata v'shlach shlo, because you and what is yours belongs to him. So definitely open to commentary. Let's start with the commentary on the mission itself. Do you mind, Jolie, reading the commentary 1 over there?
Give charity with humility, because even your ability to choose whether or not to give you is a gift from God.
So it's an amazing thing. I don't know, how do you give charity? Is that anonymous? When it says give charity with humility, I don't know if that means anonymity. I just mean, like, how do you, a person naturally feels good about giving charity. And over here he's saying feel humble about giving charity. Maybe that means feel grateful that you can give, and realize that what you're giving is not even in fact, it's not even in fact yours. I'm looking at, I'm open for anything. I'm looking at a commentary over here. He's saying, be grateful that you have the free choice that God gave you, that you could give charity. Be grateful for your free choice and be humble for that you could give charity. Okay, interesting.
Can I say something?
Please, sure.
I think that it's important to be grateful that you can give charity, but I think it's also important to be humble and to feel that you don't have to be recognized
Okay,
for
so
it.
the anonymity is the humble part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that it's not about you, it's about the person or agency or organization that you're giving it to.
Right. But does that mean anonymous?
I think it means anonymous.
I recall that there's a list. What was that list of the goodness of giving? Or it starts with anonymous?
Yeah, that's awesome, Jolie. That's right. There's 8 levels, 8 tiers in charity. The highest is actually giving an interest-free loan for a person who's struggling in their business, and you step in to help them so that they don't need to come on to charity. That's actually the highest. But Jolie, as you're saying, under that is giving anonymously. So let's say the charity box that we send to your homes for Mishloach Manot, that's actually considered the highest form of giving, because you don't know who's getting it, and they don't know who gave it. Just last night, I picked up a charity box from someone, and it's a high form of charity. But the reason why I think anonymous is beautiful, but at the same time, the Rebbe, and I would love to hear your feedback on this, the Rebbe actually kind of broke this thing with anonymity. Of course, giving anonymously, it's a high valuable thing, and the Rambam, Maimonides, like you were saying, Jolie, lists it as a higher tier. But the Rebbe realizes that we live in a time when if let's put charity on the side. Let's take any mitzvah. A person could do a mitzvah anonymously, which means no one should know how righteous I am. No one should know that I keep Shabbat. No one should know that I actually make an effort to keep kosher, or at least to not eat pork, whatever level you're holding at. But I could keep it to myself because I don't want to flaunt my mitzvahs. It's between me and God. The Rebbe actually wanted people to not necessarily show it off, but the Rebbe wanted people to publicize it. Because if other people see that you are doing it, it's going to propel them, inspire them, and encourage them to feel, oh, I could do it too. If he could do it or she could do it, I could do it too. So if a person sees that these people gave charity, it's going to encourage them to say, you know what, I should step in there and give also. So anonymity is actually beautiful. And like you were saying, Jolie, it's a higher form of giving. But a person has to know themselves. I'm not sure. But the Rebbe, if giving publicly makes you feel really, really good, then you should probably give anonymously, and because it's working on yourself. It's an important challenge for you. But if you know that your giving will inspire others to give, there's reason or room for it to be known. In the words in Hebrew, it's mitzvah lefarsen osa mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to publicize the doer of a mitzvah. So there's a lot to speak about on that. If it should be, it's a very interesting discussion, how anonymous it should be, and then about mitzvahs in general. That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, I think the other point might be that a lot of people think they're superior because they can give charity, or think that people that take it are inferior.
Yes, and exactly. And a lot of people that give charity think that now that they can control the person that the recipient or the institution that they gave it toward. And that's actually, Adrian, exactly. So I think every person has to know themselves and to know the reason of why they're giving, and should judge based on that reflection on how it should be given anonymously or not. But that's a very good point, and it could lead to dangers. There's a lot to talk about on that. Good point, Adrian. Go ahead, Debbie.
Another point is when Hever Kadisha performs Tahara, preparing a dead body for burial, they say it's the highest form, the highest mitzvah you can perform, the same as because the person cannot thank you.
Beautiful.
And then the members of the Hever Kadisha remain anonymous, so that within the community, so that then the family of the person who died can't approach you and thank you.
Oh wow! So I didn't know the anonymous part. I did know that tending to the dead is actually the greatest mitzvah, because it's in Jacob, our patriarch's words before he died. He asked his son to take care of his burial, and he called it a chesed shel emet, which means the most genuine form of kindness. Because dealing with deceased, there's no way they could ever repay you. But I didn't know that there's a thing in Hever Kadisha to have it anonymous. Maybe it's confidential, but yeah, anonymous. Interesting. So that the family can thank you. Interesting. Okay, let's. There's more. If anyone has anything else to share on it, I want to try to continue as well. But please, you're welcome.
Could you explain the last one?
Yeah. I was gonna try to avoid it. That's a tough one to explain, right?
Sorry.
Yes, we'll try to explain it. Let's see. How about we read footnote 2 first, and then I'll give a little more analysis. Jolie, you were in the middle of reading. You want to read the commentary on 2?
Sure.
This is from the second Hasidic Rebbe. He died in 1760. Nope, sorry. He died in 1772. His name was Rabbi Dov Ber. Many of my friends are named after him. Stick around long enough, we'll probably have a son named after him. His name is Dov Ber. He was the second teacher of the Chabad, of Hasidim. He was the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. He lived in a city in Ukraine called Mezrich. Go ahead.
Alternatively, one who interrupts because of his learning. Part of serving God is eliminating the ego. One who interrupts his learning because of his learning, in order to look back and admire his academic accomplishments, is considered to have transgressed a capital sin, because by undermining the true purpose of Torah study, he is disconnecting himself from God, the source of life.
Wow, what a deep, beautiful, beautiful. Jolie, do you mind explaining that, if that resonates with you? Or...
I'm explaining it now? Okay, I'm going to try. Okay, here goes.
How about we'll have some silence? I just find this, if you absorb this message.
Okay, Rabbi, I'm taking your place. Okay. Let me see. What I got from reading this is that you absorb
30 seconds of silence.
Oh.
No, I want to hear, but I don't want to put you on the spot. So take some time to develop.
All right.
I'm sure
Okay.
everyone would enjoy reading it anyway, so I don't mind some silence just to reflect on.
But what I got from it is that you should turn around and take your diploma down off the wall.
Only if you have a diploma in Torah study.
Well, I think this is putting the material of the academic accomplishments above the accomplishment itself. So it's making the study of Torah, which is a spiritual endeavor, part of the physical universe, or part, like when you divide between holy and unholy on Shabbat, that general division in Judaism, there's like a division between these two things. One is the accomplishment and the you versus the learning itself, which is sacred and divine. Doesn't really, it's undone by self-aggrandizement.
Well said, Jolie. Yeah, thank you. And I'm like, as
the text doesn't say anything about that.
right. So this is the right. Absolutely. And if you, Adrian, and to answer your question, I think it was before you came on. I'm not sure if you were here. Debbie was asking about this text. So I'll actually take time now to explain that. The bold words are the actual words of the Mishnah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And the non-bold words are helping you with the flow. But let's see if that would make a difference in understanding this. If you would take out is considered by the Torah, you're right, and interrupts the study, and say how beautiful is this tree. Okay, so yeah, good. So, and the reason how we're able to learn this, and obviously the commentary itself in the text of the Maggid of Mezrich is actually much more elaborated. Over here, they're condensing it in order to fit on the page, of course. But the Torah is referred to as a tree, the tree of life. It's our source of life. A field is considered the Talmud because it's a big field. It's daunting and large, and our job is to plow it. Our job is to plant and to grow and succeed and grow ourselves and grow this text that we're studying, like we're doing now. So, how beautiful is this tree? How beautiful is this plowed field? Could be referring to the Torah that I'm studying.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Does that make sense, Adrian?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So once you see that, it's actually a person patting themselves on the back and saying, "I did a great job. That was a great speech," or a great whatever. And then you defeat the whole purpose.
So it's symbolic of other things.
Yeah. So, and we always try to also find the depth of the text exactly. And back to what Joey and also Debbie was saying before. Even just on what Debbie was saying. Do you think this would refer to specifically Torah study, that you, looking back and admiring, is disconnecting yourself? Or would you say that's any diploma that you have, that admiring your achievements is dangerous? Or would you say that's really just represented in Torah?
I would say it's not dangerous if you're continuing to learn.
And that's anything. You're saying Torah or secular studies.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big effort. I think, you deserve a certain amount of commendation for following the discipline.
Yeah.
At least I don't know. I'm not that wise, but I don't personally have a problem with it.
So it's such a beautiful, I'm glad we stuck to it, because I was ready to just gloss it over and go further. One of the big rifts in the olden days, when Hasidism began in the 1700s, there was a huge opposition to it. I can't explain to you how big it was. If someone became a Chassid, their family would sit Shiva for them. There was excommunication for anyone. They weren't allowed to do business with Hasidim. And the opposition, they were actually called mitnagdim. Now it doesn't really exist, maybe a little bit, but there was an opposition. A lot of the opposition, their style was very much they really looked at themselves as the greatest things to ever happen to the world. When they would learn a text of Torah, and they would say, and it didn't make sense to them, they would say, Rashi got it wrong. Rashi was one of the foremost commentators on the Torah. Rashi didn't understand what he was saying because they couldn't understand it, so they put it on the scholar, the commentary they were learning from. And Hasidim were the opposite. Hasidim, if they didn't understand the text, they would say, "This text is so rich. I wish I could get my mind pure enough to understand it." There was a humility, a purity, a sincerity that was dominant in their study. I remember even just as a young Talmud scholar, a student, I should say, when I was 15 and 16, and I would bring the Talmud to my teacher, and I would say, "This doesn't make any sense." They would say, No. This makes sense. You are struggling to understand it. They would always correct me, I remember. And it actually taught me, even just that correction was such a reminder of putting myself in the right place to study, and not the opposite way around, not readjusting the text in order to make sense to me. It's putting myself into it. And over here, when a person is patting themselves on the back and saying, "I am such a good Torah scholar. My mitzvahs are so beautiful," it's important to appreciate where you're holding and what you're doing. But if a person is, in French it's agrandissement, and I think in English is, I don't know if it's an English word, aggrandizing themselves. I know there's self-aggrandizement. I don't know if you could.
Aggrandizing, yeah, that's the word.
Whatever, I think you know what I mean. It's actually a very dangerous place to be in. You're kind of going down a dangerous place to the end where he says, if you're losing your life, because if it's all about just your own enjoyment in it, and it's about, wow, I'm doing so much, it's not going to be a good ending. It needs to be propelled with humility and genuineness or genuinity, something like that. Oh gosh, I'm being recorded here, and my words are not coming tonight. Anyway, I hope that explains it a little. I still
Yes, yeah, thank you.
a few more. My family were a big fan of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. He was. There's actually not much about him in terms of Torah laws, but he was like the most righteous of his generation. He was a miracle worker. There's some great stories about him. But let's just see what he says, because he has a very important teaching. Let's see. How about my mother-in-law? You're next on my screen. Ma, would you like to read Mishnah 9?
Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa says, anyone whose fear of sin takes priority over his wisdom will last. But anyone whose wisdom takes priority over his fear of sin, his wisdom will not last.
Awesome. Do you, before we read that commentary, fear of sin, most people have struggled with. I'm actually going to even stop sharing the screen just to explain this because it's important. I just want to explain it to everyone, and I just wanted to also see the chats if there's anything. Fear of sin, I explain this often enough, so I'm pretty used to the words now. I have no problem with the word fear of sin. Many people do, because fear it's not a positive thing. We don't want to be fearful. Fear means reverence and respect, and it's something that's missing too much from our world. Nowadays, people want to, parents and children, they're more friends. Do you want to do this today? Oh, no, okay, no problem. I just want you to love me. That's not, there needs to be a respect. Children shouldn't be calling their parents by their names. Children should get up when their parents walk into the room, whatever rules of respect you want to put in place. But reverence, respect is incredibly important for the well-being of society. Fear is another word for reverence and respect. Fear of God, respect of God, is something so crucial. And any decision we make, and in a wisdom that a person has, if it's not backed and sourced from reverence and respect to God, that wisdom, don't trust it. And Rabbi Hanina is saying something so powerful. Respect of Hashem is a prelude to anything else that's going to follow. A person can have the greatest wisdom, but if there's no respect of God beyond it, that wisdom is not going to last. So we could relook at the text, but I just needed to make sure fear is understood in the proper term. It's not being scared of God, scared of punishment. It's about having reverence and respect and realizing the greatness of God and that I'm in a relationship with him. If a person is, I'll just take as a rabbi. If a person is a rabbi, but they look at anything from the Torah as whether yes, whether no, Moses is great, I'm great, God is great, I'm great too. If it's picking and choosing, and there's no reverence and holiness to the words and respect of God in the study, then the wisdom, you can have the greatest wisdom, but it's not lasting. Let's look at the text again. Anyone could argue with what I'm saying, and I don't get offended. You're welcome to chime in, but I just find it to be such an important fear of sin needs to take priority over any wisdom. A person can have great wisdom, but you need to have respect as a backing to anything else. Otherwise, it's not going to last. Let's go. If anyone has a commentary on it, you're welcome. Otherwise, let's go on to Mishnah 10. Debbie, do you want to read Mishnah 10 for us? And if you don't mind, from the screen, I know you have your own text there.
Yeah,
but
no, that's it. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa would often say, anyone whose good deeds exceeds his wisdom will last. But anyone whose wisdom exceeds his good deeds, his wisdom will not last. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa would often say, anyone who people find to be pleasant, God also finds to be pleasant. Because by being pleasant,
I'm just going to squeeze down. Sorry for that. Go ahead.
he sanctifies God's name. But anyone who people do not find to be pleasant, God does not find to be pleasant, either because he desecrates God's name.
Okay, let's just stop there for a second because that's already a lot from Rabbi Hanina. Anyone has any comments on it? I find this to be so beautiful also. You could really just reflect and meditate on this. Your good deeds have to be better and stronger than your wisdom. A person could be the wisest of people. But if you want your wisdom to last, it has to be followed up with action, with good deeds, with making a difference. The Rebbe, there wasn't a talk of the Rebbe where the Rebbe didn't say these words. Hamaisa hu ha'ikr. The Rebbe would give some long, deep analysis of a verse of Torah, but the Rebbe would say, now what difference does it make in how we're going to make this world a better place? Action, these are the words. Hamaisa hu ha'ikr. Action is the most important. That's the primary. So it has to lead, your wisdom has to lead to an effect. A good deed has to lead to something. Otherwise, it's not going to remain. It's not going to stick. It's not going to last. I find that to be beautiful. And just there's a commentary here that just describes some of the good deeds. Of course, I'm speaking to a screen of people that are filled with good deeds. But just to give us ideas, good deeds include hospitality, charity, helping the weak, taking care of orphans, widows, clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, especially those who were once wealthy and are therefore embarrassed to ask. There's people that are comfortable to ask, but there's people that are very uncomfortable to ask. Good deeds include helping those people that are uncomfortable to ask. Thank you. That was nice. Go ahead. Yeah.
I had a thought on this, Rabbi. This is really timely because it's making me think of a million things. Every one of these verses is making me think of a million things. It's almost like here's the rosebud and then it just blooms and blooms. And this one, I was thinking of the people who work with me, the staff who cares for the people that we care for, the adults with disabilities. And, it's been scary. It's been scary. Just like with Shira, it's scary. And we get a little emotional here, but because there's risk involved and we're learning how to manage it and it's becoming manageable. But I'm noticing a level of good deeds, of courage, of the contemporary orphan and the poor and the people who need help. It's right now. And this is really, this time is helping me see people pop out of the pancake, pop out. They're like the raisins and the walnuts. They're goodness. It's not that everybody else is bad, but this time is showing the ethics of this,
Awesome.
of this, these words that to me that shows these good deeds surpass all the education of these people, and they are not necessarily the most educated,
Mm-hmm.
but they are so wise and
That's
so
right.
different, and I'm so humbled by them.
Thank you, Jolie. I love the way you shared that, and you're right. And it's not because they're actually the most educated, because it's not about the education of the book. It's about the education of how to be with another person and the good deeds that you do, and that's amazing. And to follow up on that, the way the Rebbe is able to understand this Mishnah, the last line, if your good deeds exceed your wisdom, that means if you have good deeds, your wisdom will exceed also. When you have the good deeds on the forefront, your wisdom your soul will become purified enough that your wisdom, your study, whatever you do take in will be much easier to absorb, will be easier to understand because of the effect you're having on others, even just within yourself. The Rebbe would always share this. People would say, I don't want to become a rabbi and a Chabad rabbi where I'm teaching Aleph Bet. I want to be studying the Talmud all day and night. The Rebbe says, go out and teach Aleph Bet and help others. You're going to see that your level of study will increase. It'll be so much easier for you to absorb and understand and take in the text because you're helping others. Your soul is on a deeper, more refined place. Amazing. Thank you, Jolie. We're going to just go on for 5 more minutes. There's a very important one. I'm sorry. There's someone else asking to join. We're going to go to Mishnah 11, mainly because of one part about embarrassing a friend in public, but the whole Mishnah is beautiful. So let's see. Who's next on my screen? Adrian, would you like to read Mishnah 11?
Sure.
I have you next to me.
Rabbi Elazar of Modi'in says,
And by the way, sorry, just I'll stop you. Modi'in is where the miracle of Hanukkah took place. The original miracle was in the city of Modi'in, so we like that. We like that city. All right, go ahead.
yeah, there's a plaque on the hill where they have the defense.
Oh, about Hanukkah.
That's where my son lives.
Oh, cool. Oh, wow. All right, so I'm glad you're saying this Mishnah. That works fine.
Someone who disgraces holy things, someone who disrespects the festivals, someone who embarrasses his friend in public, someone who nullifies the covenant of Abraham, our forefather, by not having a circumcision, and someone who explains Torah not according to its correct meaning, even if one of these people has learned much Torah and performed many good deeds, he has no part in the world to come, unless he repents for his actions.
All right, so heavy. There's a lot going on in this Mishnah. So just some commentaries. Disrespects the festivals. How do you disrespect the festival? I see a commentary, from the Maharal. Some of you know the Maharal of Prague, Rabbi Yehuda Lowy. He died, I think, in 1609. He made the famous Golem. The Golem that many of us are familiar with was from the Maharal. So he has a commentary, disrespects the festivals, means he belittles the importance of festivals, saying, all we do in festivals is eat good food and drink good wine. I want to remain away from that because I'm a holy person. Someone who does that is actually disrespecting the festival. The point of the festival is to be joyous, to be merry, and to be happy with good food and whether meat and wine or any other way, depending on your diet. That's important, and it's actually a mitzvah. Embarrasses his friend in public is actually the main reason why I wanted to make sure we get through this Mishnah, is because it's heavy. Embarrassing a friend in public, you may seem it's just interpersonal, it's just between me and a fellow, it's not between me and God. And yet actually that, unless he does tshuva, he's in for it, because there could be those words that you embarrass with can never be taken back. I shared a story on Friday at a pre-Shabbat Zoom inspiration that a person once ridiculed and embarrassed a friend. And he was looking for a rectification. And he went to the rabbi. The rabbi said, take a feathered pillow, rip it open, drive around, and spread out the feathers. And he did it. The next day, he finishes the job, and he goes back to the rabbi. The rabbi says, now collect them all. And the guy said, that's impossible. He said, you can never take back words of shame that you gave to someone else. Those words are out there. You'll never be able to take them back. Realize how important, and the shame, the embarrassment. I could go on and on with stories about embarrassment, but in Judaism, it's the only way to get forgiven for that is by actually going over the person, apologizing, and that's still not enough. You have to actually publicly apologize. In law, Torah law, you would have to go to the synagogue, where in those days it was like the post office, where everyone congregated, and now it's nowhere. Now it's going to be on Facebook. But in those days, the synagogue was the place. You have to go to the center, bang on the table, and publicly apologize to that person. That's how much you have to do. Actually, one of the commentaries say we should learn from Tamar, and since my mother-in-law is on and her name is Tamar, it says Tamar was ready to die. She was she was actually the great-great-grandmother of King David. From her lineage, from her birth, from her child Peretz, came the birth of David. And Tamar was one that she didn't want to embarrass Judah, who was the leader of the time. She was ready to die and not embarrass. So that's amazing. And is anyone still here? Did I lose anyone?
We're here.
Oh, okay, perfect. Something popped up on my screen, but I can still hear all of you guys. Does anyone have anything else to share on this?
No.
Okay.
About disgracing the festivals,
Yeah.
disrespecting the festivals. So for me, it's hard because my mother died on 16 Tishrei, the second day of Sukkot. So it's very difficult for me to be happy and joyous and celebrate the joy of Sukkot when I'm
In mourning, in the yard side.
mourning her. So I don't want to I don't want, it's hard to be joyous there. So I hear, by that definition, I would be disrespecting the festival, but I don't want to disrespect her.
That's beautiful. I can't, it's an emotional place to be, and I definitely can't answer such an emotion. And I thank God it's such a tough time to be having to celebrate, like you said, Debbie. All I could say, what's coming up in my mind, and definitely what you're saying is something so it's sad that you lost your mom in Jeddah. That's already a mourning, especially on a holiday of joy, which is Sukkot. What comes to mind is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who we actually celebrate him this month. In just 10 days, today was the 8th of Iyar. Shabbat is going to be the 8th of Iyar, and in 10 days is going to be the 18th of Iyar, which is the date of passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And before he died, he says he wants his death to be not commemorated as a day of sadness. He wants his life to be celebrated in a happy time. We know now is Lag BaOmer. It's an extremely festive day. We have barbecues and bonfires, and we play good music. Because think of how your mom would want you to celebrate the holiday. While I didn't meet your mom personally, I know a little bit of your mom, Debbie, through you and the donation you made in honor of your mom. And what comes to mind is your mom would definitely want you to be in a celebratory mood, and to bring her along for the ride and the joy of the celebration. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, for being vulnerable and sharing that, Debbie. Okay, we're going to end our class for this evening with that. And for some reason, my video is not working. I don't know if I can't see any of you anymore. It just popped up. Maybe it's a sign.
We can see you, and you're still alive.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear. Thank you. I needed that confirmation. All right, so we'll end with that. Thank you for another beautiful class. We will continue next week. Don't forget, tomorrow, Adina is doing a challah kugel making at 12 o'clock on her Zoom, which is jewishimada.com/Adina. At 7 o'clock, we'll have a pre-Shabbat inspiration. I'll share a Shabbat parasha thought for around 20 minutes with some l'chaim. And then next week, we're full of fun and exciting activities. You can also find recordings on jewishnevado.com/virtual. Please be safe, be healthy, a Shabbat Shalom, and we hope to see each other in happy, healthy, and joyous times very, very soon. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye.
Shabbat Shalom.